Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another Faith Group Bible Talk. We're going to be talking. I kind of named this lesson. I don't have slides. I don't really like doing slides. Kind of named this lesson, though, Moving Ahead. And so the premise is, surprisingly enough, about current circumstances. I think it's pretty safe to say that the country as a whole is kind of at a junctures, at a crossroads. Um, and what I mean by that is that a lot of places are looking at their current position and saying, you know what, let's lighten the restrictions. Let's open things up a bit. Let's give the people the outside back a little bit. And other places in the country are saying, still not safe. We don't want to risk it. Let's double down on this. Let's really try and work through that. And I'm not saying strictly that one is better than the other, or half the country is right, half the country is wrong. That's not my point here. It's not where I really want to begin. Where I want to begin is when we look at these situations and these points that we find ourselves in, whether it's us in Pittsburgh, us in like LA, what have you. The question we should all be asking is, what do we do going forward with everything we're being told? And so my opening scripture in all of this is from 2 Corinthians 4, verse 18, and it reads this. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal. So obviously, this is a scripture that's asking us to look ahead to something that's a bit more abstract, something that is on a much larger scale than our current circumstances. And I think, and we'll kind of touch on this a bit later, I think the tendency for a lot of people, and arguably even myself at times, is I'm going to hunker down and I'm just going to survive until this ends. And then I'm going to just get out of here. I'm in survival mode. That's it. I'm just weathering this out, which is an understandable response. But, well, let me ask you that. What do you hear, or what do you feel when you hear something like that, just being in survival mode?
When I think of survival mode, I think of kind of basically me and mine's goes first. I think that kind of comes with the mindset that if you're in survival mode, everything else becomes second besides me. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Desperation certainly comes to mind. Looking at just sort of what the immediate needs are and only going for what is immediate and what we perceive to be of absolute most importance. And usually means having to cut ties with a lot of other things, letting a lot of things fall to the side. I'm not going to care too much about a few dishes in the sink if I'm worried about not being able to have my house in a week. It's like, dishes, who cares about dishes? We got stuff to do. We want to stay here. We got to make some money.
Yeah, I definitely think about getting rid of excess. I think about visually thinking of, you're carrying a lot of things, and you're kind of only picking up what is essential. All that other stuff, kind of like what Matt was saying, is non-essential. So dishes in comparison to your house, like very different premise. So or throwing off, oh, I don't need all this extra junk, but let me go grab my dog because my house is burning. That's the first thing I'm grabbing. Like, I don't care about my cell phone at that point. I want my dog. So yeah, I think of eliminating the excess.
Sure. Desperation.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's just to make the life more simplified, to get rid of all the extra things and only keep the essential.
Right. Yeah. So we're hearing a lot of like desperation plays, survival plays. We triage our entire life. What is the absolute high priority thing that needs to be attended to? And what are the things that can just be removed? And really trying to trim the fat, really trying to make sure that everything at home is squared away. And those are all incredibly valuable things. And I don't want to knock any of that. I think it's absolutely important to do that, especially right now. If, I mean, honestly speaking, job situations for each and every one of us is complicated and difficult and challenging, and it's hard to know what a paycheck in 2 weeks may look like. If that's even really a possibility. It's complicated, and that's just across the entire world right now. And so, irresponsible spending habits, something I admittedly can be quite prolific in doing, need to really be slimmed down. They need to be removed, because it would be very frustrating and very sad to know that I can't pay rent because I really had to have that shiny new object. Or I wanted to have a $50 one-off dinner versus being able to feed myself for 2 weeks. We have to really take those priorities, and those are all incredibly valuable things to do. But what I think the danger is that we think that's all we have to do, that we just stop right there. And it's funny, we can kind of think of our own bodies this way. Our body has different mechanisms in place for when we start to not feel good, or more specifically, we notice that you don't have a lot of food and you haven't been eating food a lot. So we're going to start changing some things up. And your body does everything it can to maximize how long it can live when resources become scarce. Super valuable. Definitely happy that my body does that, because I don't want to die because I missed a meal one day or something. But it doesn't solve a greater problem, which is getting food in my stomach. I should also be looking to see, well, how do I stretch a dollar for all it's worth? How do I stretch a meal, stretch my resources, but also start building things up so that I am no longer living in a situation where I'm denied resources or I'm limited on things. And there are a lot of physical, practical things to discuss. But my point more so is, how do we take that mentality going forward as responsible disciples? How do we exemplify God, demonstrate following Jesus' example in the real world, while some of us are stuck inside, or some of us are able to freely go outside or have to go outside? How do we set that example in a righteous, responsible way? And how do we grow in situations where it doesn't even really feel like there's much reason to grow? I think, again, survival can kind of just be the first step in really great things for us, but it can't be the only step, and it definitely can't be the last step. We have to take steps after that to really grow. So the next scripture I really kind of wanted to go to is in Proverbs. And I think, kind of typing everything up, a lot of stuff comes from Proverbs, which kind of makes sense. Proverbs is that nice book of the Bible that really just gives you good life lessons in nice short bursts, that's just been shared from father to son, mentor to mentee, generation to generation for a good long while. So I don't think they should be so easily dismissed, even in like the secular world. I think the secular world can gain a lot and does trust a lot some of the things that are said in the Bible. And honestly speaking, some idioms that we just say on the day-to-day is from Proverbs. So surprise. But the first passage I want to look at is in Proverbs 27, verse 12. And it reads, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." So what do you what do you take away from this passage? What's this saying to you? I'll repeat it again just to keep it fresh. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty.
I don't know how many people here are familiar with The Office. In short, there's an episode in which Michael, played by well, I almost said Stephen Colbert. It's like, wait, no, that's not right.
Steve Carell.
Like Steve Carell. Thank you, other Steve. Right. So he's following a GPS, and then he interprets a bare right turn as a right turn, and he ends up driving straight into a lake, regardless of what his eyes are telling him. He's driving straight into the lake because he's trusting this GPS. There's a certain amount of confidence that we can have in lots of things in our life, and there's things that we should have confidence in. Being able to have confidence that we're going to be able to get from one place to the next reliably, yeah, sure, that's a good thing to be confident in. But we also need to have an awareness of our current situation to not be putting ourselves into a bad situation. Proverbs talks a lot about folly, and it's not necessarily definitive as to what it means when it says folly. It just says those who participate in folly, either they will come to a terrible end, or they're not going to have enough food, so on and so forth, what have you. But essentially, folly, if we were to look it up, it's essentially being reckless with your own life. It's one thing to be going out and taking a risk, and it's another thing to live in a reckless way, which is just something that God doesn't want us to do in anything, whether being financially reckless, whether being reckless or flippant with what we say to other people, with how we conduct ourselves, or just doing something that could potentially risk our lives. It's not something that God desires for us to do.
Mm.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts or anything else that kind of speaks?
Yeah, so I looked up the word prudent, and then for some reason my digital Bible is not working properly because I was going to look at it in a different version. But word prudent meaning acting with or showing care and thought for the future. And so thinking that in the context of this, because we obviously can assume like, okay, the simple just keep going on the path and they, end up paying that price. While the prudent, so thinking of like those characteristics of somebody who would take refuge when there is trouble ahead. So thinking of, or like, okay, I don't understand what my digital Bible is doing, but thinking about people who kind of have that mentality of looking ahead but seeking that refuge, and I can assume that refuge being God, is kind of like an interesting like way, because typically when I read Proverbs, like you were saying this way, like it's something to look at as ways that we can focus on God and, life lessons, that kind of stuff. And taking on like a prudent characteristic is definitely something we can see throughout the Bible, but it's interesting to see it in this context, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I read this passage and I see it elevating a particular mindset and not supporting another one. We see a prudent mind is elevated, it's honored, it's the desirable mindset to be in. And we're seeing that in contrast to that, those who don't follow this mindset and keep going ultimately pay the penalty. And, it's meant to be that kind of abstract, vague, what sort of danger, what kind of refuge, what does it mean by simple, and what sort of penalty? And it's meant to be all encompassing. And, when we start thinking about our own situation, specifically COVID-19 and what we're being asked to do, I think this really comes to mind as this is the mindset that should be at the forefront. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. What do you think that means for you on a day-to-day? If this is the one passage of the Bible that you read on wisdom and advice for how to go forward during the COVID-19 crisis that we're experiencing, what does it mean to you tomorrow morning?
I think one thing that comes to mind for me is considering how to move forward, because I could be potentially reckless and nearsighted, assuming that every time that I go out, that I don't have to continue to wear a mask, or just be washing my hands on a more frequent basis, or just sort of be situationally aware, just because of the low rate of COVID, specifically here in Allegheny County, which is incredibly low, and is something that that gives me a lot of hope and confidence for our little area of Pennsylvania. I definitely don't think that it would be wise to go out unprepared, because I got myself to take care of, I've got my family here to take care of, and so me just being prepared for that, so that none of us become that statistic of people that get this. So yeah, just sort of having that foresight and having that precaution.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because even, I think there are definitely people who can take that mindset of, well, I can do whatever I want now, or like, yay, like a little bit. I've been seeing a meme lately where it's like Phoebe and Joey from Friends, and Phoebe says like one word at a time and then puts them all together, and then Joey messes it up. So it's like the idea of like, we're limiting some restrictions, or like hey Ty, we're limiting some restrictions, and then Joey's like, freedom, we can talk to whoever we want, we can touch everything, we can do everything. And it's like, wait a second, no. And it is kind of tempting to be in that mindset because it's hard right now to be in quarantine and to still limit who we see, and to still have to wear a mask when you go to the grocery store, or like I wear gloves when I go out because I could be touching something, and I could wear gloves and wash my hands, and I know that that's like the best practice. But then there are days where I'm like, I just want to go to the park and just breathe fresh air. Like, I really just don't want to wear a mask right now. And that's where it kind of gets into that, like, I get myself out of survival mode and I don't see the danger because I'm kind of tired of seeing the danger. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have felt that before.
I mean, I definitely understand that feeling. Like the other day we went out and I had a mask on, and I was so conscientious of that mask, so aware of it. And I was like, I feel like such an idiot right now. Like, I'm outside in this park and I have this mask on, and I'm taking other steps, and I'm like, oh man, should I really like be this close to people? And like, I'm almost being borderline paranoid about the entire thing. Like, literally 1 in 5 people have coronavirus is my mentality, in that it's just a matter of time. And it's definitely not quite that bad. It's not that severe. But then I have my own hangups, and I have my own like concerns, and I'm tired of wearing this mask, or tired of observing these principles and doing these things. It can't be that bad. And we just, we fall into that idea of like, well, I've weighed the costs and the risks, and I think the risks are okay, right? Like, they have to be. right? And you know, it's maybe true, but it's still a risk. And you know, we have to be willing to admit that and see that and say, well, what does Jesus call us to do when it comes to risks? What are we called to do when we're faced with decisions that are important and potentially impact others? And then to Matt's point, I think we can oftentimes just think simply of ourselves, just not even really aware of that. Just, oh, I'm going to do this thing because it just impacts me. It's totally fine. If I get sick, oh well. Um, but you don't really think about, well, what about that other person that you interacted with? Or what about your roommate? Or what about your family, your spouse, your partner, your coworker if you have to, or that person that you spent just a small amount of time in? Like, yeah, there are small chances that they may get it. And maybe if everyone observes everything, chance really minimal, but there's still a risk. There's still a chance, all because you wanted to do something selfishly.
Mhm.
And we may be able to rationalize it away as not that selfish, but it's still selfish in the grand scheme of things, and it's not needed. It's not putting others above yourself. Um, so I think it's a very interesting call. And again, seeing that mindset is super valuable because it's where all our decisions from here on out should stem from. It's being prudent and seeing the danger for what it is, making necessary decisions from there. Um, but Josue, I hear you say, what about those of us that just can't ever leave? Like, I move to California tomorrow and I am 100% incapable of leaving my house for the next 3 months. Well, then I don't have to worry about the risks because I'm just never going to see anyone. Um, to that, I say 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 26. And if you're a disciple, this is what I say to that. Well, actually, this is what God ultimately says to that. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Is that 1 Corinthians 9?
Sounds like Proverbs.
Yeah, I just read that, and that's a very Proverbs thing to say. I think I
Yeah, I
rewrote.
mean, that First Corinthians one is cool because in verse 24 it talks about running the race, striking a blow to my body, you know, so on and so forth, and
That is
running the race to receive the prize. That's cool, but
good scripture,
yeah.
kind of an interesting point. I just forgot to change it because I was originally looking at that passage and then didn't change it in my notes.
So Proverbs 9.
It's, I don't know what proverb it is.
We're gonna search it. What? Read it again.
The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied.
Megan, welcome to my digital Bible. It does nothing.
Does
Here. I'm sorry. I wish I was more helpful right now.
Proverbs 6:9 is pretty good, and it does talk about a sluggard.
There are a lot of sluggard references in Proverbs. I will
There
say,
certainly
so
are.
when I was a baby disciple, one of the first things that I did, and I advise this to many of people who are learning the ways of being a disciple, is I went through Proverbs and highlighted scriptures that specifically referred to me. And I was a sluggard when I was a baby disciple. So, you know, I definitely highlighted a lot of that in there.
I found the passage. It's Proverbs 13:4. So that's the right passage, or right verse number. But yeah, again, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. So as I said earlier, I think sometimes we get stuck in this survival mode while we're stuck inside, which again, absolutely necessary step, but not where we should end up. So what is complacency NFL. What does complacency look like? Especially looking back on the past few weeks before the transition into the yellow phase and we were in the red phase. What did complacency look like while we were stuck indoors? What did that really manifest itself as? Whether overall the entire duration or even just a few days for all of us.
I think for me, it looked a lot like waiting until, okay, so basically, one of my professors said that you don't have to turn in any of the work until the end of the semester. And so that's the absolutely worst thing for someone to tell me, because I'm not going to turn in all of my work until the end of the semester. And so I think one way that I was complacent was just like seeing the assignments, and I would make minimal effort. I would like try to start because I knew like how bad I was with it. But then eventually, like I just, okay, whatever, forget this and kind of move on. So I think one aspect of it was just kind of not taking care of things. And I think that kind of mentality bled over to other stuff that I was working on, but just not taking care of things when I had the time to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I would say for me, when I have two different perspectives, because I have one from when we went into the red zone and I still had a job. It got to the point where working just kind of seemed mundane and unimportant because a lot of our projects were getting canceled. I literally had to work by myself, and normally I work with a team of 4 people. And so there was no like relay in any way. My boss wouldn't even show up to work. Like he was scheduled to come in to have him, like, to be able to see the progress that we've been doing so I could show him, hey, this is what I'm doing. And he just wouldn't show up because he didn't feel like it that day. And so it kind of came to this point of complacency of, well, nothing I do matters anyways. And then post getting laid off, again, it was that same kind of mindset of like, well, nothing I do matters anyways. But it was also like, oh, like I have such a great opportunity to do all these things. And then, as you guys may assume, laziness overcame me. And just like, that mindset of like, oh, I could work out every day. I could do online yoga videos or online like workouts and P90X and all that kind of stuff every day. And then it just kind of comes to a point of like, of more than just laziness, but just more of like, okay, I have all the time in the world now, and that's not really the case anymore. Meaning like, okay, like there's a potential that I could get my job back. There's a potential that I might get a new job. So this might end at some point, but still that complacency of like, I'm okay with doing nothing because there's nothing really to care about, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yeah, for me individually, I didn't see much difference between like the yellow phase or the phases before. I basically still stay at home, and my company asked us still to work from home until it's totally safe. But I think a good thing for yellow phase is at least we can see the hope that we are very close to be reopened again. Personally, I don't want to go out or to be a symbol very quickly, because I know lots of success is a failure at the last moment, like because we're not cautious in the last minute, and then it causes an accident, and accidents gets bigger, and all the previous work that we've been happy about is going to totally destroyed. So I just don't want that things happens again. So I would prefer more cautious, still wear my mask, and still stay at home as often as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think what's really valuable to see is how easy we get into this mindset of just not wanting to really thrive in these situations. Um, I definitely feel the same way to what you had said, Sammy. As far as work, I totally can at times feel like it's mundane. It's kind of just something I do for half the day, whereas the other half of the day is
Right.
not that, and I'm not doing anything maybe, or I'm doing one small task. How many of us have started taking up new hobbies while inside? I've made 2 loaves of bread yesterday, and I feel like I'm going to be making a lot more.
Oh, that looks really delicious.
Thank you. I was really proud of
Very
it.
buttery.
Yes. But yeah, we can just do enough to get by, and we're kind of waiting for everything to resume and everything to just go back to the way it is. And I'm very much of the philosophy that there is no going back to normal. We are past the point of normal. There is going to be a new normal, and that's going to be different than what we had before, and that's okay. We should be 100% okay with that. But I think the worst thing is to just look at this situation and think, well, I don't have to worry about changing anything. I'm just going to wait it out. This literal thunderstorm will just go over my head, and then I'll go outside. And that's just not true. That's not what we're called to do as disciples. We should be craving to do something. This passage references the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Are our souls diligent right now? Are they actively striving towards something? Could they be striving towards something? This is a great opportunity for growth and change, and to just explore new things. And, it'd be a real shame to just let the past 9 weeks plus however long past this to just come and go and say, happy that's a thing of the past, but not losing a skip in my step. This is the exact same as I was when I entered it. I'm coming right out of it. Nothing's changed. Nothing's different.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really what God is calling us to do in this moment? To just walk through challenges and not change, not adapt, not grow with them? I don't think so. That's not why they're there. They're meant to cause us to reflect and say, you know what? I need to do something about myself in this moment. And I'm not going to wait for circumstances around me to change so that I can feel like myself, or I can feel normal and feel fine in this. That's not what Jesus or God has ever really called us to do. And so I think this is just a great opportunity for us to make that decision of, how do I really capitalize on this great opportunity right now and not care about what tomorrow necessarily looks like, or how much closer to normal, whatever that means, tomorrow looks like. And it just really just be set up for great new exciting things going forward. And, I have the hardest time with that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think it's a good call, and I think it's a challenge that we really have to take to heart. That honestly, if I come out of this and I talk to someone who says, yeah, no, you could have just locked me up in a box, froze me for the past however months this entire thing has been going on, come out, and I haven't changed even for a little bit. Okay, well, I don't really know if I should trust a person like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're really learning life's lessons very well. So I think it's something valuable with regards to us being stuck inside. But we're in Allegheny County, and we're in yellow, and I can go outside a bit more freely than before. What does that mean? Again, in Proverbs, because I love Proverbs, apparently. Hopefully I got this right. Oh, I'm literally 12 lines down. Proverbs 13, verse 16. I didn't notice that because I didn't write my passages right the first time around. Hang on a second. Yeah. Again, we see a similar idea. In everything, the prudent acts with knowledge, but a fool flaunts his folly. Proverbs 28, verse 26. Whoever trusts in his own mind is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom will be delivered. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 13. Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, and that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people. So I got those passages because we're seeing a bit of foolishness sometimes. Going outside. To your point earlier, Sammy, we kind of just go out. Well, now I have all the freedom in the world. I can do whatever I want. The world is my oyster. I've been imprisoned for so long. That's just not what we have. We don't really have that freedom. And I'm not going to go all political on this, but we do also have authorities, whether they be a mayor, a governor, a president, Congress, king, queen, whatever they may be. We have people in power saying, do this, don't do that. We recommend this. We have experts in fields saying, if you're going to be doing this, be prepared this way. But we highly recommend you don't even attempt to do these actions. And we see people in the world who are saying, I don't like that. I want to do what I want to do because I think I'll be fine. And I'm just going to go out and do it. Where are we on that? God is very clear in some capacities on who we should be listening to and how we should be listening to them. But where are you in the grand scheme of things, honestly, in a gut check? What are you really listening to, and what are you kind of just maybe disregarding right now? I know that I sometimes leave the house for reasons I probably really don't need. I don't need another case of Pepsi. Don't. It's not true. But I'll go out for a stroll because I'm allowed to go out for a walk. And I wear a mask and, I do what I can to make sure I'm safe. But I didn't need to go out there in the first place. So am I doing my part responsibly to the best of my ability? I'd say no. What about all of you? What is there something that you maybe could do a bit harder, try for, that maybe you're just not demonstrating?
For me, I was trying to writing letters to the sisters and brothers during the quarantine time. And because the yellow face, then I could deliver some of the letters that I already done. But recently I've been lazy again, and then I didn't write much. So I was trying to put this back again. And because I think a letter is actually a very good way for communication, especially during this time, we cannot get any physical touch or very personal because we trying to keep the social distance. So I think letter can express the things that I want to say to them and also give them some encouragement. I think the things that I was trying to disregard is some of the news from the social media, because a lot of the social media news, some of them is not true, and some of them is trying to terrifying the others. Especially some of the social media from the other country, they were say, oh, this is how many people getting confirmed for COVID-19 US, and how many number has been increased during the day. I think this news is not helping me at all to focus on things that I should focus, because people are increasing. This is things that out of my control, but they are trying to keep repeating the news and trying to, I don't know if for their marketing or get that accounts much more popular than the others, but I just trying to keep a little bit away from all the social media news and doing more things like act in the local things, writing the letters or study or read my Bibles or listening to some Bible talk podcasts.
One of the things I know I could do better during this time in particular, which is something that's sort of ebbed and flowed, but in general, leading my household in a spiritual way on a more frequent basis.
Mm.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've kind of need to be better at since being home, it's really easy for me to kind of like want to, I guess, kind of be into myself and kind of just want to kind of work on some new hobbies that I've been trying to get into. And so, but I'm a very like one, I'm not good at multitasking. And so once I'm doing something, I'm kind of just like focused into that. And it's really easy for me to just kind of disregard my family. And so I think one thing I need to do, especially with like my brother and my sister, because they vie for my attention a lot, is just to like, I guess, one, to recognize that about myself and like kind of set my own boundaries with that, but then also making sure that I'm like pushing forward and initiating with them and giving.
What a cliffhanger. He just froze for everyone else too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. I was afraid I froze, and then I saw all you moving.
No, only him.
I watched everybody else's heads nod, so yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Cortland, for sharing while you
A phrase.
sort yourself out. But yeah, I think everything that was shared is super valuable and 100% true. And we have to be very wise with what we're hearing and wise with the information we take in and wise with what we do with it. I can go outside right now. Do I need to? No. But if I do, what responsibility is there for me to do so? Like I need to take responsibility for my actions, and I need to take responsibility for how I impact my community. So if I'm going to go out, I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can so that if I interact with anyone, I know that I've done my part to make sure they don't anything happens to them.
Mm.
And again, this plays into that idea of putting others above yourself and just not being selfish about COVID-19 here and wanting to move forward. Obviously, we all want to go outside. We all want to do things. We all want to just kind of go back to normal, and we can take little steps. We've been granted little steps. But we as disciples listen to God. We as disciples have things that we need to be responsible for. And I think it's part of our responsibility to be members of this community that set an example. And it should never be said that we're out in the world doing the things that the authorities say we shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It should be said of us, oh, they followed the rules. They did what they could. They did their part. And, even on top of that, they still helped in the community when they could or did something nice or what have you. And this isn't just to make ourselves look good, but this is all in an effort to glorify God. And so when we're out in the world and someone looks at our actions, do they see God being reflected, or they just see us just doing our own thing, just being in our own mind and exalting our own way of thinking? Oh, I'll be fine. I'm young. The likelihood of me dying to it is so low, right? That's what I keep hearing. And I'll say to that, by the way, I'd still just suffer. I would probably have like the worst flu of my life, that however long I have it. And I don't know anyone who wants to just be sick, right? Like when the flu is out, we do everything we can to avoid it. Job situations are rough enough as it is. I don't want to take time off of work. So that's just my little soapbox moment. But yeah, hi, Cortland. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, my computer just restarted out of nowhere. I don't know.
But yeah, just kind of like come in for that close here. I think it's important that we really look at our situations, whether we're stuck inside, could go freely outside to some degree, or anything in between, that we have a lot of opportunities to really glorify and exemplify God in our actions. Whether it's striving for personal growth while stuck inside, or really being examples in our community on what it means to be a disciple and to listen to authorities and to listen to experts and to really just be responsible in these moments. Scripture at the close is 1 Corinthians 10, verse 23. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I think that's just important. We have a lot of flexibility and freedom. Honestly, even during the red phase, we had a lot of freedoms. Nothing was, strictly speaking, illegal or legal, save for a few instances here and there. But we still had to demonstrate responsibility and do our civic part. We still have to do that. We still have to be mindful of that. Things aren't back to what the new normal will be. They're not there yet. We shouldn't go crazy. We also shouldn't just lock up inside and say, you know what, call me back in 3 months and I'll be ready. No, we should be capitalizing on these moments to do awesome things, whether for ourselves or for our community. And so I hope that, you guys really hear that. I hope anyone who's listening on YouTube really takes to heart to that. I hope this is, honestly, even if you're not, who's this Godfellow anyway, of which I'm sure any one of us are more than happy to really talk to you about. I hope even some of these principles ring true and help you understand why now's not quite the right time to just go out and do crazy things, and also not the right time to just go to sleep, wake up, and go to sleep again. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope it was edifying, and that's all I wrote.
Yay! Thanks for the sharing.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, bro.
Show up.
All right, advertising time. If you like the video, please click thumb up to show your like, and also remember to subscribe our channel, Pittsburgh Church. Thanks for watching and see you next Tuesday.
Bye.